rob the tombs, chop up the heads, and that's how they sell it. Okay? So it's very coveted. Right? The last time that I heard about this robbing of a tomb was here in El Paso, back in '98. And a baby like that in Thomason, now it's UMC, but in Thomason, that's when a baby was born, and then of course somebody paid attention to where they buried him, and they robbed the tomb. So it's very common to see this with babies. And remember, the best procedure for this is to do a brain tap. Directly tap in, remove the CSF. But that would be a last resort, or a spinal tap. Why? Because of increased contamination. Its CSF has glucose, pretty much, coveted by bacteria. So the own bacteria of the baby or the person can end up creating more problems. So that's why it's a final last resort. But again, it is a circumstance that has been done. We don't know how the Inca did it, because the Inca also did, cranial surgery, some type of surgery, because we've been finding skulls with holes on them. Somehow they've been doing something to those people, and apparently these people did survive the surgery afterwards. I don't know if you're interested in skulls. Again, so they've been finding that also aspect. So again, we're not the only ones now in this era that are doing, some type of surgery with a skull. So this is interesting to see that maybe it's that. Okay, so again, the applied pressure is very high and has high concentration of sugar, and over time it does crystallize, precipitate to form some precious stone. All right, so now we're going into the spinal cord, but this is just a little taster, right? It's not the entire thing. So I want you to look at page 3, no, the last page, page 4. That's one in the back. And here, I want to focus on the roots. That's what they're called. These branching structures, these are nerves, but we need to know what type of nerves is in these roots. So we have 2 roots on the spinal nerves. Number 2, see that? Ventral root, dorsal root. All right, so the ventral root, you know that's the front of the body, ventral. So when you look at the spinal cord, the ventral contains motor or sensory? Motor. That's right. For movement, the ventral contains motor neurons. The dorsal contains sensory. Sensory. So in other words, what we're saying is that when you feel something on your finger or in your legs, you sense it, that nerve is going to go through the back side of the spinal cord, not through the front, through the back side, so that it can send the information up the spinal cord to the brain. See that? But, this is the big but right here, does that nerve that sense that stimulus, is it able to reach the spinal cord? And the answer is no. The sensory nerve does not reach the spinal cord. It stops prematurely, close to the spinal cord. That's what we call the ganglia. So the dorsal root contains a nerve that stops right before the spinal cord. So the ganglia, what we say about the dorsal root is the ganglia is closest to the spinal cord. That's the dorsal root. Okay? So that means that at this ganglia is what we have like an extension cord. The nerve stopped there. Now you need another one to go ahead and take the message, relay the message to the brain. So the nerve somewhere in your finger picked it up, the nerve, and then it's going to come over here, and this is where it's going to stop. See that? And then another nerve is going to end up taking that information. You see where it's going? It's going to the lesser wing, or the smaller horn, and then from here it's going to go up to the brain. But it's one continuous nerve. You see that? It doesn't stop. One continuous nerve. So that nerve stopped there, and then another one relays it. So you go to the brain. Now when it's coming back down, this nerve comes back down. It's going to hit this area, the greater wing. This is part of the motor nerves. Either the visceral, it has its own spot, or the somatic. The somatic, of course, is where we're hitting at. That's the somatic region. So this is a skeletal muscle nerve. So motor nerve. So it's going to come out, see that? And it's going to go over here where you have the muscle. Is it going to reach the muscle? No. It has to relay the information. So the ganglia is furthest away from the spinal cord. The ventral root has the ganglia. Ganglia is where that nerve stops. Is furthest away from the spinal cord. All right, any questions there? The ganglia is closer to the spinal cord. The ventral ganglia is away from the spinal cord. Remember, the ganglia is where you have that relay, that area where the other nerve has to take over. Okay, so it didn't reach the targeted area, and it only needed a few more inches, to get there, or sometimes even less than that to get to the target. Okay, but it didn't do it to get to the targeted area. All right. Any questions there? So those are the main things that I want you to know from the spinal cord so far. All right. So far, that's all I want you to know. Okay. So once again, the spinal cord, does it have this meninges, this membrane around it? And the answer is yes. It has dura mater. Where's the dura? Outside. You can touch it. And then on the inside is the arachnoid, and then the membrane that's on the surface, adhering to the surface of the spinal cord, is the pia. The pia mater. P-I-A. Pia mater. All right, so again, as we look at the spinal cord, what root is this one? See the big bulge? See the bulge? Which one's that one? Pick one. B or D? B or D? Dorsal or ventral? Pick one.
Dorsal.
Dorsal. See that? So the dorsal is going to go to the lesser wing, and on the lesser wing you have spots, two hot areas for the visceral and the motor. So it has two zones. We're going to see that later on in chapter 13. And then from that it goes to the brain, because it's sensory, remember, sending it to the brain. Goes up and then comes back down. And of course, if it's a somatic motor nerve, it's going to hit the greater part of this greater wing, and it's going to end up coming out, motor nerve. And remember, the ganglia is furthest away from the spine. Okay? So that is a nice illustration of that. We have a spinal tap right here, or we could have an epidural. Let's make it an epidural. So where is the epidural is going to be given? So that's going to be between the L3 and the L4, the lumbar region, of course. So that is usually the area that you want to go. Again, lumbar. See, it says right there, lumbar. So again, if you can't tell the person, then you go between the L4 and L5. That's like a safe zone, but it actually hurts because you could scrape the bone, the vertebrae. All right. So that's one of the problems that people do experience, that they have had spinal taps or the epidural. Remember, the epidural is given for you not to numb your pain from the contractions. Okay. It's anti-biblical. You should feel the pain. You shouldn't feel the pain, but the thing is that's to numb it. But the thing is, it doesn't help you because you're not pushing correctly, because you're not sending the stimulus to the muscle. So you're pushing just in your face and not over there. Anyways, so that's the problem with the epidural. But again, the point is, if they do it correctly, you should be all right. Now, if you have a tattoo, that's been the other issue. On the lower back. Yes, on the lower back, that's the worst place for you to take it or put a tattoo. Because now what they're interested in is, what type of ink did you use? See that? Because that ink could travel in here and then now cause the poison that will kill you. They don't want to risk it. But again, it all depends on the ink that you got. So I don't know, did you ever care what type of ink they're adding onto? You should. Okay, so now you know. Another thing that I just came to my mind right now is LSD. Because in the spinal cord, it does accumulate. I have not verified it, but there is a lot of suspicion to say that this LSD, as you go under pressure, like in the airplane, these crystals can actually end up aggregating and then causing severe interference with the nerve impulse as well. So it could go into coma. A person could go into coma. So that's the other issue when you have drugs circulating in your spinal cord, like that one. LSD does get in there. Again, remember the cordia equina? That is the so-called, they call it the cordia equina because of the spreading of the nerves, like a horse's tail. That's what it is. The equina is a horse's tail. Okay, so that's where you have less bundles. All right, let's move on. Okay, we'll talk about these areas later on more, and the reflexes. All right, so I want to talk about this. This area is going back to the brain. Remember on the spinal cord, we just touched the ventral root or dorsal root, which is going to help us for chapter 13. We're going to go back to that page, your fourth page on your handout. So this is going back to page number 2, where you have the precentral gyrus and the postcentral gyrus. This one is somatic sensory. So which one is it? Pre or post? Post, that's right. It's post. What is somato? Somato means? Somato? Not stomach. Somato? Skeletal muscle. Visceral, remember visceral is smooth muscle. So this is skeletal muscle, sensory of skeletal muscle. But it's the cortex. What does that mean? We're talking about in the brain. Where's my brain? In the brain. See that? Right here. You see this line right here? That's the central sulcus. The central sulcus. You see that line? So we're talking about this area of the brain, the postcentral gyrus, this bone right here. This one, when you cut it open, that's the blue part, the gray part. The one that is highlighted in blue, that's the gray matter of this postcentral gyrus. So if I touch at the top over here, you see at the top right here, I'll be making you feel something in your trunk or your hip. See that? As I touch this area. So that's how you know. See that? So this is the postcentral. See that? Of the central sulcus. So that's what we're talking about, the sensory. You're feeling something. So that's the feeling strip. The motor strip is the movement feeling. That's the feeling. And that's this area right here. Yellow is the motor strip. So anyways, so as we look at this area, it has been identified. And then, of course, we see this bizarre figurine. Well, let's see why we see that figurine. Why is that? And then, of course, I'm going to give you the answer of how is it that you could get closest to a person. And it's not through intercourse. Okay? The closest that you could get in contact with a person. So let's first look at the video.